Hi, folks. Welcome again to our sixth session in the Monsu Caulfield Club Committee Member Professional Development Program, facilitated by myself, Gary Ryan from Organisations That Matter. It's a pleasure to be with you here again, or if you're watching the recording. We've got some work to be doing this evening. A quick welcome. We're going to get you to complete a two-step process that's going to help you have clarity for your role. And you'll also learn how to use this process to quickly establish role clarity for your peers. So it could be other committee members, or it could be specific to subcommittee members that you recruit in to help with organising an event, for example, using these same principles fundamentally in a verbal sense that might get followed up in some form of use of technology to communicate what gets clarified verbally. But I'm going to show you how to use this process for that. Tonight, you will be doing some hard work. I don't apologize for that. It's going to be that smart hard work that we talked about back in the self-talk session. And then we'll focus on next session. So we're going to jump straight out and go to the Miro board. I'm just going to stop the share there. So on the Miro board, the first thing I want you to do, great Sadman, see that you've popped your name there for us. Thank you. Alina, if you wouldn't mind just adding onto that first frame sticky note. Once you've done that, come across to the right and there's the second frame that I've set up called roles and responsibilities. You'll notice that I've got a little template there where I'm saying, please add a committee role on green first, and then I'm going to get you to just brainstorm what are the responsibilities that come with that role. So if you're a president or a secretary or a treasurer, for example, you might have a membership coordinator, you might have someone that's got a social media role. Just think of the various roles in your committee. So firstly, just add the roles that you're aware of with your club and its committees in green. And after we get a few of them, we'll start adding some orange sticky notes, and then I can help with the connector lines to identify what might be the responsibilities that come with that role. Because what we're going to be working through this evening is the more clear, and I call it clarity is queen, the more clear you are about what the responsibilities for a role are, so much so that you can actually say them out loud. I have this role and I'm responsible for this, this, and this. And then for each of those responsibilities, when you can say out loud, for this responsibility, this is how I know that I'm doing a great job. And for this responsibility, this is how I know I'm doing a great job. And for this responsibility, this is how I know I'm doing a great job. It's very, very powerful when you've got that level of clarity for your various roles that you're able to identify this. So we're just going to get you to add to that roles and responsibilities brainstorm some orange sticky notes, green sticky notes to start with. If you're not sure how to change the color, just let me know and I'll quickly teach you. So we'll move across to that second one. We'll just grab some green sticky notes and just start adding the roles to start with, and then we'll start thinking about, and feel free to unmute yourself as we might discuss, well, what might be the responsibilities that come with that role. So I'll just let you spend a little bit of time identifying some various club committee member roles. Great. So we've got president, treasurer, secretary. So if it's already there, we don't need to double up. Okay. Vice president. Now we've got designer. Cool. Marketing officer. Okay, yes, social media manager. Events officer. So think specifically to your clubs. You don't have to add things that aren't part of your club if you're thinking of the various roles that might be currently present. I'm wondering, is there any roles regarding membership, sponsorship, any roles like that? Are there any diversity and inclusion type roles? So an LGBTIQIA plus officer of some sort, possibly, as an example. Is there any sort of roles like that? All right, cool. Events officer. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some of these and just move them to the left-hand side of the page under the example. Okay, so I'm just going to grab some of these and we'll just spread them out a little bit. Vice President, we'll move that down as well. I'm just going to create a bit of space between them. And then what we want to do is start thinking of using orange sticky notes for each one of the roles we've identified. What might be some high-level responsibilities, 1, 2, or 3 high-level responsibilities that come with that role? Okay, so I'm just going to pop some of these along here as well, so you'll see where I'm popping them. And then what we want to do is just to the right of the green sticky notes, a bit like the example I've done at the top. And again, feel free to unmute yourself if you've got any questions. What would be a high-level responsibility that's associated with the president's role? What's a high-level responsibility that's associated with the designer role? So great title, but what do they actually have to do? What are they responsible for? So social media manager, for example, I assume it would be they're responsible for ensuring that the social media updates for the club are posted as agreed. There's a responsibility for getting the social media posts out about what the club's doing. Maybe the social media manager has a responsibility for increasing the number of followers to your various social media platforms. So not only they're responsible for the posts, they're responsible for increasing the followship associated with those posts. Again, just as a high-level example. So schedule and chair meetings for the president. Cool. So I'm going to link these up here. Making the final decision. Is that more when required, when you say make the final decision? Because a lot of committees would have a voting process that you have to go through and things need to be voted on. And so sometimes the president has to make a casting vote in that scenario. Plan and delegate members for events. Okay, cool. All right, so if you can get 2 or 3. So how are we going for Alina for yours? Are you going okay?
Yep. Good.
You know, if you think of the secretary, they're generally responsible for meeting agendas and minute taking and minute distribution. There's those sorts of high level responsibilities. Yep, chair meetings in absence of the president, true. That could be that as well, or the vice president potentially. Some of these roles potentially could cross over. Communicating with Monsu, okay, there, when it was starting to think a bit outside the box as well there. Cool. Taking minutes, yep. And By the way, Alina, given you are a president, Alina, are you doing the president one or are you doing the secretary one at the moment?
I just moved on to VP. I was doing the president one previously.
Okay, cool. Gotcha. And so, Sadman, you're doing the secretary?
Yeah.
Yep. You might find that if there's a vice president, the vice president would chair in the absence of presidents. If there's not a vice president, it may be the secretary, or in fact, the treasurer might do that responsibility.
Often, I actually don't know about like Monsu, but for the Clayton campus, I think I read it that if the president in absence is the secretary who chairs the meeting instead of the vice president.
Yeah, that's fine. If that's what's the way the club set that up, it's absolutely fine. The important part is being clear about that. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
because I actually don't know about this because I haven't really worked any secretary work at Monsu.
Sure. So taking the meeting minutes. Yep. So the vice president communicate with teachers for lessons. Okay, cool. And what you're doing there, Alina, is you're differentiating between the different roles. And this is what's important about role clarity, is we want the different roles to be clear about what does this role do and what does that role do. And if there's crossover on occasion, what's the order of crossover, such as we were just discussing with the president and the secretary in terms of chairing the actual meetings. It's really important that we've got that clarity. Awesome. Yeah, so you're moving on to the treasurer. So they've got a responsibility for the club's finances, which would be both making sure that things like bank accounts, etc., are correctly managed, that transactions are correctly followed, but also that the financial reports are accurate for the club as well. So it would be reporting. There's quite a number of high-level responsibilities that obviously come with the treasurer. Now, while you two are doing this work, one of the things to think about is if the people in your committees were doing on this call with us right now, would they be writing the same thing or would they be writing something different? Now, if it was to turn out that they would write something different, that's actually okay. And that's part of the importance of actually sitting down and clarifying like this in a visual way, who's responsible for what. Because if it turns out that what they think they're responsible for isn't actually part of that role, then that's fine. We shouldn't get upset about it. Let's just fix it and get it re-clarified. Okay, that's the whole purpose of this. Too often we leave it to people's assumptions or mental models about what comes with a role, or we think they know, or they think that they might look stupid or silly if they're to ask or seek clarification. What we want to do is make it absolutely okay for people to check and clarify that this is what the role's about. And this little process that we're going to go through tonight is about doing that. Great work, the two of you. Thank you. Okay, so we don't have to do them. We're not going to do them all. We've just got enough there to get you going. And I want you to focus with this next part on yourselves, on your current roles. We're just going to worry about your current roles within the club, which no doubt you started on this brainstorming board. So we're going to get each of you now, please, to move across to one of those big frames that I've set up to the right of where we are. And you'll see that there's some instructions as what we're going to do. So I'll get Alina, if you wouldn't mind taking the first one, and you'll see that on the right-hand side within that frame, there's a table that's called key responsibilities. And right at the top in blue, there's a box where you can add your name. And Sadman, if you wouldn't mind moving to the one that's across to that, across to the right from that again. So further across to the next big one, and you'll see similarly again, both big boxes are set up the same. On the right-hand table up the top that's got the title Key Responsibilities, there's an option for you to type your name in there. If you just click on the box, it'll open for you to just add your name in there. Okay, just click in that box and in you go. Saying, yeah, Alina, you already done it. And if that's right, same thing, go to the one beside it. Thank you, Alina and Sadman. You two are flying along. And Sadman, just add your current role. So you'll see that there's some instructions for you. So step one is to identify the key responsibilities for your role, which we sort of just brainstormed already. So we just want to go and type in you'll notice I've got up to 6 spaces. Okay. So we don't need, you just click inside a box under that key responsibility column first, and just type in for each row one of your key responsibilities. Just go into that row, type in your key responsibility for that row. And if you've got 3, you've got 3. This is a template. You don't have to have 6. But for your specific roles at the moment as president, and Sadman, if you wouldn't mind also just adding your current role up there as well. So the first task is fill in that key responsibility column. So just worry about the names in that column first. And then once you've done that, I'll talk about the next step. So you've got your role, you've got your key responsibilities that we're focusing on at the moment. Okay, so Sadman, that's right. You've got the social media manager role at the moment. I think that's right.
No, actually, designer.
Oh, the designer. Okay, great. Terrific. Terrific. I'll pop that up here. Designer. Cool. All righty. And remember, you can zoom in as much as you need. So think about now, once you've identified your key responsibilities, the next steps, this is where the smart hard work kicks in. What are the quantitative, so number-based measurements, and or qualitative, so comments type measurements, feedback type measurements on that are verbal or written, but not numbers, that would identify that for that specific role, you are doing a great job. So it answers the question, for this specific key responsibility, how would you know you're doing a great job? And this is where the smart hard work kicks in, because you've got to stop and think, gosh, how would I know for that particular key responsibility I'm doing a great job? So for example, Alina, for your scheduling and chairing committee meetings, one of the measurements would be that you achieve quorum for every meeting that's scheduled throughout the year. That you, a second one might be, and you'll find that there are often multiple measures against each key responsibility. So please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions of me if you need to, but there are normally multiple measures. So again, for scheduling and chairing committee meetings, one of the key measures normally would be something like we achieve quorum for every single scheduled meeting. Another measure might be we would have a minimum of, whether it's 4, 6, 8, 10, whatever the number of minimum meetings that you should have, which your constitution might stipulate how many you need to have potentially. If you don't have a constitution, you may have some other documentation about how the club was set up and its purpose, and some key rules, if you like, for how the club needs to operate. So if you don't have a constitution, you might have some document like that that would stipulate a minimum type of meetings, for example. And if I move across to Sadman, you've got, so designing social media posters. So you take feedback. So what I want you to think about here is, how would you know that the design you're doing for your social media posters is delivering at a great level? How would you know? All right, so collecting feedback is a process. What would be the feedback outcome that would indicate that your posters are effective? So the number of likes and shares and likes. So it might be, again, something like a minimum of 10 shares, a minimum of 100 likes on one platform. The numbers might be different on another platform because of the differences between the various platforms. But if you would do it, so this is challenge you to think. This is part of the smart hard work. It's, yes, the feedback's important, but to indicate, because you could get one person likes it and, okay, is that enough? Would that mean you're doing a great job? Or would it need to be more specific and usually you'd set a minimum, right? This is where you would normally say a minimum of. You might have noticed I said the same for the meetings before. If we get less than the minimum, we might not be doing as good as we'd like, but if we get a minimum, and by the way, I'm not talking about a pass level. I'm talking about a great job. We want to be as clear as we can, and we want to stretch ourselves using that creative tension concept. How would I know I'm doing a great job? Yep. So as you've done in brackets there, Sadman, it might be, okay, I don't know what that number is tonight, but this is what you would negotiate with the president, for example, because we want this role clarity, particularly as to the person that you report to. And in this case, you would report through to the president, and Alina, you look in the mirror and report to yourself, but actually you report to the rest of the committee on one level, okay? And what we want is each person's role on the committee to be as clear as possible about what the key responsibilities are. And then we want it to be as clear as possible about what delivering a great job against each of those key responsibilities looks like. And the more clear we are, and what I'm teaching you here tonight, Alina and Sadman, is this is exactly what you ought to do for any job you ever have. Whether there's a position description that's 1 page, 10 pages, or anything in between, or there's no position description, get clear about an agreement with the person you report to as a minimum. What are my key responsibilities? And for each one of those key responsibilities, how do I know I'm delivering a great job? Sometimes in your careers, you will discover the person you report to isn't clear about those two answers. But if together you can have a high quality conversation and get it clear, it's going to be better for both of you. And also, most importantly, it'll be better for the organization that you're serving. And in this case, it's clearly a club. Again, at any stage, please feel free to unmute yourself and just ask me. Okay, so communicating with other parties, Monsu, and other clubs as a key responsibility. Read and reply to all club-related emails. Now, if you were doing a great job there, Alina, let's say you got an email on the 8th of July and you replied today. So you did reply, but it's 2 months later. Would that match what you mean by what you're writing there? Would that be a high level outcome? Spot on. So you might say within a week, okay? Even that, for some, which we'll see for the second part we're going to move to after this template, would a week be quick enough? for some key stakeholders. Let's say, for example, you were recruiting someone to participate in an event, someone from industry, and it was taking a week to reply to their emails. How do you think that would go? Would that help that relationship?
Probably not.
No, and look, to be brutally honest, now I'm not saying this for every single email, and when you're in a president's role, you have to make some decisions about these things, but probably 48 hours is the longest you would want to take. And it's interesting, platforms like LinkedIn, people tend to respond even much faster. You'll notice that with other social media platforms. Someone would realize that too, that it's amazing with some of those social media platforms. They are actually more effective ways to communicate more quickly with busy people than traditional email. But 48 hours is probably a maximum sort of time frame. And if you absolutely knew, say for example, it was exam time, you might actually communicate in advance to exams and just let people know that throughout exams, it might take me a week to get back to you. I'll still endeavor to get back faster than that, but you would actually be very proactive with that communication, which would mean a qualitative measure would be that your key stakeholders would say, you're a great communicator. They would actually report if there was any way of capturing this information, maybe through a member survey or stakeholder survey. Though somewhere in there, you would see those words, Alina, the president, was a great communicator. You would actually, so you imagine the words that people might use to describe your performance. Plan, oversees and delegate tasks to, so organising at least one event per semester. And you might say that the participants or of that event rate the event at a minimum of 7 out of 10. No one's going to rate it 10 out of 10. That's very rare. But you might actually say, so not only are we having an event, but we're actually having we're going to do our absolute best. If I'm delivering on this key responsibility, it's going to be a good event. And this does create pressure, this clarity, of course it does. But that's actually positive pressure. It's positive stress, if you like. It's called eustress. Sadman, how are you going? All right, communicate with the officer. Okay, so again, coordinate with social media officer to work with the social media campaigns. Communicate with the officer. Again, we need to be clearer. If you were doing a great job in your coordination with the social media officer, your social media campaigns would be delivered on time and as agreed. I reckon that would be something like a measure. Your social media campaigns would be delivered on time and as agreed, possibly by the committee itself, or maybe just between you and the social media officer. Does that sort of make sense? Yeah. So when we're thinking of this column here, we're thinking, what's the outcome we're trying to get to? So we're leveraging that creative tension session with the elastic band. What's the outcome specific to that key responsibility that would indicate I'm doing a great job? So again, the social media manager, in this case, social media officer rather, would report that you are good to work with. That would be a qualitative measure. The social media officer would report that you are good to work with. Something like that would be, they would say that out loud, and they might just say that at a meeting at the end of the year, or they might say it, but that would be a measure that you would be, okay, I'm going to work towards the social media officer saying that, so I'm going to be as easy as possible as I can to work with. Okay, great work. All right, now, so we've looked at our key responsibilities. We've looked at identifying some measures for those key responsibilities, both quantitative number types and qualitative verbal type feedback. The next column is a self-report. So you would go, okay, overall for that key responsibility, am I green, meaning I am delivering according to those outcomes? So right now, today, I'm delivering at the green level, which means my current status is I'm on target. I'm mostly on target, but maybe there's one area where I'm not. So that's yellow, or I know I'm completely off target. That's red. This is just a self-report you would have for yourself. And then the right-hand column of comments is just any comments. And what you would do with this template is and I'm going to give you the access to an Excel spreadsheet that does this once we work through this evening, is for you to download. You would actually take some notes and you would save that spreadsheet to in a format where you would save it to the 8th of September 2021, for example. And then in 2 weeks' time, if you updated it, you would save it to the 22nd of September 2021. So you've got this file that you're updating with your status column and your commentary about anything that you would need to explain that relates to your current status. So if everything's green, your comment might be on track. If something's yellow, you might mention the one part of that measurement that's not quite on track that you're working on to fix. If it's red, it might be, yeah, we're missing at the moment, but I'm doing A, B, and C to get back on track. As a way for you to be on top of your role, okay? This is a tool for you to personally be managing so that you can communicate with other people at any moment, if required, about how you're actually going with your role. You're taking full responsibility, and I call it owning your role. Any questions about those two right-hand columns on this template, folks? Okay, all good. And I'm also checking the chat too, if that's easier for you. All right, if you now scroll down to the table below, come down to it says it starts with key relationships. So the first one to do is, in the first role, actually name the people or the role that, in order for you to deliver on your role yourself, who are the other people that you actually have to have a positive and constructive relationship with? Think both internally to the committee and externally to the committee and your club. And often the people that I coach and do executive coaching, we actually write names in this list. We actually not only do the roles, but we literally write people's names. So think of your role and think of both internal and external names of people as your first step. Now, how this works is, a lot of people don't understand that the relationships you have with people around you actually impact your ability to deliver on your key responsibilities. And I'm going to give you a concrete example. A senior finance person in a local council that I was coaching. So we had the CEO, the general manager, and then this person. So the third level in the organization, quite a senior role in an organization with 1,500 people. And that person had 8 key responsibilities for their finance role. And they identified to me that 3 of those key responsibilities were at least yellow and 1 was red in its current status. When we went through this relationships template, one of this person's peers, so another person at the same level of them, but in a different department, they identified that the relationship with that peer, so neither of them reported to each other. They're at the same level in the organization, but in different departments, but they had to at times work with each other, a bit like different committee member roles having to work with each other to make a successful event, for example, or to do reports or whatever the case may be. But these 2 head-butted. And the person I was coaching, I said, okay, tell me about this relationship. And he told me it was very poor. I said, how do you know it's poor? And he said, well, the person's told me in no uncertain terms that I should stop sending them long emails and that I should go and see them and speak to them or talk to them on the phone first. And this was back before COVID came along. And I said, well, have you done that? And the person I was coaching said, no, this person's silly, and labeled them different names, as people do when they blame other people for relationships not going well. And, you know, they need the information I send them in the emails. And, you know, I'm busy. I'm too busy to go see them. And I said, let's go back to those key responsibilities that aren't going well. Are any of these three related directly in any way back to this other relationship? And he said, yes. So I asked him, why are you sabotaging yourself? What do you mean? I said, why are you sabotaging yourself? Why are you continuing to damage a relationship or not work your hardest on fixing a relationship that is actually coming back and affecting your ability to deliver on your key responsibilities, when it's your key responsibilities that you get measured on in your organization? And in that organization's case, it even included an impact on bonuses. Like, why would you do that to yourself? And the penny dropped. Gosh, I actually have to take responsibility for the relationships, even with people I don't necessarily like. So this is important too. Of course, on committees and clubs, the chances of you liking each other's a lot higher than maybe it is out in the so-called real world. But it's, you know, ultimately that's ideal. If you like each other and we get along professionally, that's fantastic, of course. That's ideal, but it's not always the case. But nonetheless, each of us has to take responsibility to nurture relationships. So on this list, think of what are, as you know, identify as many roles as possible. Alina, I see you've got 2. There's more for you. There's plenty more as president. There's going to be people like who within Monsu, for example, you need to relate to. Sadman as well. Is there anyone within Monsu that you need to relate to regarding some of the things that you're doing in that design space? You know, do you ever use Monsu's logo, for example? So if you do, I'm sure that there must be someone there that you would have to liaise with.
No, actually. So even if I need something like a Monsu logo or something like that, I usually approach my vice president or my president, and they usually get it on behalf of me. Like, I do not have like direct connection with anyone from Monsu.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Are there any through so the members, for example? So you don't actually do, you do the design for the posts, and then the social media officer actually posts them. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're doing your designing, do you at times have to go and liaise with people outside of the club, TEDx, in terms of promoting who they are and getting their permission that the social media person then uses in those social media posts?
Usually that's the task of the vice president. Like, we coordinate with the vice president as well. Like, anything which has something to do with the like other departments, other clubs, or other people. Usually they are handled by the president or the vice president.
Okay.
And yeah.
So in that second column, then you can start filling in what's your pattern of contact. Now, this is just a broad question for both of you to start with. Would the pattern of contact for each of the people you identified on your key relationships list be the same for everyone, or would it be more unique to each person? What's your answer? Would the pattern of contact for each of the people on your list, would it be the same for everyone, or would it be unique for each relationship?
What is actually the pattern of contact?
What do I mean by pattern of contact?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I mean by pattern of contact is the pattern of contact purely as required? So whenever it's needed, is it regular, that it's a minimum of once a week? Is it every day?
Right.
You know, I have some of my, on my business list. Now, I'm a bit unusual. My list, I've got currently 127 people on it. And In some of those cases, those people I'm only making contact with 4 times a year. And I'm only using tools like LinkedIn to actually communicate with them, because any more would be annoying in that relationship. And the intent of that, maintaining that relationship, is that when they need what I do, because of the maintenance of the relationship, even at that contact of maybe 4 times a year, I'm one of the first people, if not the first person, that comes into their mind to think, oh, I'll go and get Gary Ryan to do this. Other people, of course, I'm in contact with on a daily basis, getting the work done. So it's going to, there's often the, so even where you're writing less frequent, what might be, what drives that? What drives less frequent and what's more, and what does that really look like? When is it less than once a month? Is it less than once a week? That sort of stuff. Alina, just checking that you're going okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so the pattern of contact, that makes sense. So for example, with yourself, the secretariat might be at least weekly. So again, you can say minimum here. Your events officer, club coordinator, other club presidents. So other club presidents, that might be 3 to 4 times a year potentially, or whatever that number might be. You got your marketing and creative officer. Now, I assume you might have someone with him as the club coordinator, the Monsu person in your case. So it could be, so that could be things like it could be responding to their requests. That could be the pattern. So if they request something, you respond. So that would be a way of describing what that pattern looked like, potentially, if what I'm saying there is accurate. Okay, cool. And then once you've done that, okay, cool. Well done, Sadman. So then you can move over to the right-hand column. What might be at least one specific behavior that's unique to that relationship that you might already be doing, which is a keep doing behavior, that, if I keep doing this, it's going to help the relationship. And it might come back to that conversation we had with Alina earlier, where it was about the responding to emails within a week versus 48 hours. It might be keep responding to the emails in less than 48 hours, as an example. That might be as simple as that. In that person I was talking about in the city council, he actually had a stop sending long emails, start visiting in person or calling, then sending a summary email if required. Now, in that example, that particular person did do that, and we had a 6-week gap between our sessions. And in that 6 weeks changed, in this case, his behavior. And I asked him how it was going. He said, "You're not going to believe this, Gary. Our meeting was on a Wednesday." He said, "Just on Monday, there was me, that person, and another peer having a meeting. And the other peer was upset about something that they were blaming my department for, which actually wasn't my department's fault, but they were blaming my department. And this other person stood up for me." I said, if they stood up for you without you asking, that's the impact of you changing your behavior to improve the quality. I call it nurturing the relationship. So if you can just think of one keep or stop. So none of us are perfect, right? So these templates are for yourself. If you recognize, gosh, I am taking too long to respond. I need to start responding more quickly in a better time frame, for example. Or it might be, I know I'm talking over the top of my fellow committee member when they speak and I'm not listening. I need to start listening and let them finish speaking. And, you might be leveraging that set of behaviors from the high quality conversations session that we ran last week. So think specifically, and this is being a high level, this is the smart, hard work, remember, folks, actually bothering to stop and think about what are my behaviors that are helping nurture this relationship. If I've got some behaviors that are doing the opposite and I need to stop them, I need to recognize that and I need to do the work to stop it. And now normally if you're stopping a behavior, you'll be starting a different one. Now, it's not easy to do this, folks, right? This is hard work. But to be able to one day describe how you've done that and why you did it is going to be extremely, it's going to sound unbelievably professional, and it's going to help you immensely in your careers, especially if you practice this while you're in a club, because a club is a real organization. It's real work, in my view. Okay. It's not pretend, it's real. You actually do real things. You might as well get the benefit of that reality of your work, if you like, so you can leverage it and talk about it and learn these practices to take into your careers moving forward. Okay, fabulous. Alina? Okay.
Nothing is coming in my mind for the third column. Could you explain me a bit better, like what to do with that?
Okay, so specifically then for you, with the president, you're saying you've got a pattern of contact 2 to 3 times per month, right? So what are you already doing a behavior that the president's happy with? It makes the president think positively about you. Now, is it because are you showing initiative in that contact with the president about what you're doing? So they're not having to chase you. You're being proactive. Now, if you are, that's an example of a keep doing behavior. Keep being proactive with the president so the president doesn't have to chase you, as an example. Okay. Now, it might be, that's right. It might be, continue to contribute to conversations in the committee meetings, for example, and Alina might get this experience where, sometimes the rest of the committee is sitting there looking at the president to do everything, to come up with all of the ideas. And the president's going, what do you think, folks? And everyone just stares back at the president. It doesn't help the president at all. Actually, someone saying, well, look, this is an idea I've got, and contributing and responding to the president's questions or other committee members' questions, which means you're bothering to listen, is a keep doing behavior, because it helps the committee. It gets us talking and it helps contribute to innovation. So that example like you've got there is spot on. Okay, Sadman?
Yeah, got it.
Right. Now, what I'm going to do is inside the Miro board, I'm going to upload a template that is this for you to download, okay? So you'll be able to download, this key relationships template. I'm just going to zoom out. I'm going to place it just underneath that first board where we brainstormed. It's just an Excel spreadsheet, so you can go and click on that and download it. And I'm also going to upload the presentation from tonight's session for you as well onto this Miro board. And then I'm going to very quickly just talk about how you do this for other folk. And I'm going to, so the presentation for tonight's just going to be right beside that template that I've just loaded for you as well.
I actually have to leave now. I actually have work.
Sure, Sadman, I understand. That's fine. Thank you for coming along again. We'll see you next week, hopefully.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So in terms of having role clarity, again, clarity is queen. We want to have people either doing a committee role or doing a role for a function or event or something like that. We want them to be able to clearly describe each responsibility. So we want them to be able to say out loud, my role is insert role, and I'm responsible for A, B, and C. Now, if it's only A, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It doesn't have to be A, B, and C. If it's just A, that's cool. Some Some roles in committees are going to be very, very, very small on many levels, but we want them to be clear. We then want them to be able to describe how they would know they're being successful for each of those responsibilities in their role. Okay, so how I would know I'm doing a great job is for responsibility A, I would insert what the achievement is. What's the quantitative or qualitative measure? For responsibility B, if there is one, I would insert the achievement. For responsibility C, I would insert the achievement. That level of clarity absolutely helps everyone get the job done to a high level. Remember, we don't want to have those key responsibilities and the measures just at a pass level. We want to say, if I was doing a great job, what it would look like. So thanks again to Alina and Sadman for coming along tonight. The next session is next week. It is on not Wednesday the 8th. That is not correct. I will fix that in a second. It is going to be next Wednesday, next week rather. Yes, it's going to be on the 14th. So I'll fix that right now. So it's going to be on Tuesday, the 14th. That's number 7. There we go. We'll pop that back into the presentation. Talking about clarity is queen. So it's on Tuesday, the 14th of September, 7 p.m. again. It's how to use LinkedIn for the benefit of yourself and your club. You're going to understand how to achieve all-star status within LinkedIn. You're going to know a simple, time-efficient strategy for maintaining contact with your connections, because you don't want LinkedIn to be spending a lot of time. I'm going to teach you a strategy that once you've got set up, no more than 10 minutes per day. And you're going to have information to determine if it's worthwhile creating a page for your club on LinkedIn. It may or may not be. That'll be up to you. Once again, it would be terrific if you could connect with me on LinkedIn before then. So if you've never used it before, just go and join and set up. It's going to be quite a live session with you working on your profiles as I teach you these 7 steps to go through that next week. Once again, it's Gary Ryan from Organisations That Matter. Thank you for coming along, Alina and Sadman. For the rest of you watching the video, I look forward to working with you next time.